Hi all. This recording and video will be the Introduction to Stata, sponsored by the Cornell Institute for Social and Economic Research. Our acronym, CISER, C-I-S-E-R. And coming at you live would be your friendly neighborhood statistical consultant, Jacob Griffin. Happy to be here. And during this workshop, I will talk about some CISER services and hopefully get right to Stata as quick as possible. It is an introduction to Stata. This workshop assumes no prior knowledge. I will share my screen to display all of the necessary mouse clicks and keyboard typings. And thus, I would open up a web browser, in which case I'm going to pitch a little bit of our CISER services. In the description section below this video is the links that I used, that I selected. And so I'm going to get right into it. I type our website, ciser.cornell.edu. And that would bring us to our home landing page. And there's a few features that I want to talk about quickly. And for those who want to get right into Stata, I'll just be explaining setting up an account with CISER and giving yourself access. On that note, if I scroll all the way to the bottom of our page and select underneath quick links, the site map shows all of our web pages, but there's one specific that I want to go to. Underneath computing, the first button says available software. And CISER provides servers, computing resources where you can connect from them at any time, at any place in the world, so long as you have internet access and you can safely save your files in a secure location. But you also have access to all of the software listed here. And the best part is it is all for free. All of it for free. All you have to do is set up an account. And to do that, I'll go back to our CISER homepage by clicking on the logo. Here I am, back at the homepage. And I want to request an account, essentially. I'll scroll down a bit and go to the Computing tab underneath Our Expertise. And I'll scroll down some more to see Request an Account over here as a sidebar option. That's what I want. And I have the option Apply for a research account or request a account that uses sensitive or secure data. We have both services, a secure computing resource. Both of them have the same software, give or take a few. But I click on the button for Apply Research Account. You would have to fill in your credentials, regular Cornell email and password, and then you're in. You'd see Request an Account. And in order to request an account, all you have to do is provide an affiliated member, somebody that is perhaps your advisor or a faculty member in your department. And I'll close, well, no. I'll go back to my home page of CISER.cornell.edu. As there's a few more features that I would like to discuss. Now I'd say I'm ready to connect to the servers. I'm ready to go. So I would first go to this Help Center tab that we have conveniently placed on the website, where you can find login instructions or resetting your password. And also this page that shows me how busy the research or class servers are, or CREDC servers. So naturally, before I connect to a CISER server, I could click this button and check out, here are the research servers and their utilization. So it looks like to me that 104 has not very populated, so I will connect to that one. But I could also click on class utilization to see for class servers and which one is the most efficient option, as low on the graph, low percentages would be what you want, faster processes, CRADC, and the graphics users. So for this demonstration, I will connect using my research accounts. And I'm just going to show this process that can be replicated for class accounts and research accounts alike. I'd go to the Help Center just like I did prior and check out my button of how to log in. In my case, I have a Windows computer. I just said I was going to sign into a research server, so I select research. And I follow the instructions that are provided on the website. Or I could watch the sample sign-in video at the bottom. But I'll do the instructions. For Windows, it says open remote desktop connection. So I'm clicking on the start menu. And remote desktop connection is a pre-installed desktop application on a Windows computer. For a Mac computer, you have to download an application called Microsoft Remote Desktop. But upon signing in, or opening up rather, this remote desktop connection, I see this view. And I see I had decided that I was going to select Research Server 104 because it is the least busy server from what I had found first. I shall highlight the entire server, and I'm just going to copy it and paste it into my computer name. Then I shall go to the next step in the instructions. It says to proceed my CISER username with this prefix CISERRSCH with a backslash. It has to be a backslash. Followed by your CISER ID, which is your net ID. And then if you have a research account, it would be your netid _RS. If you have an account associated with a class, then it would be your netid _ the name of the class. So I shall type in my netid _rs. I can save connecting to this instance somewhere on my desktop if I always want to connect to a certain instance, although that's not necessarily always advised, as some servers can be more busy than others. It is most efficient to check which one using our website is the least busy server. I press connect. I enter in my password. And I would be displayed this window if everything is correct. I press yes. And I proceed through connecting. I have successfully done it. A troubleshooting method for if you cannot connect would be to try to switch to a different server name or reset your password and try again. Those are the two big user troubleshooting solutions. Alas, here are my servers. And now I'm ready to begin. I will open up Stata by going to the left and clicking on the Start menu, as these servers are Windows-based. So even if you have a Mac computer, it'll feel like you're working on a PC computer. And I scroll all the way down to S for Stata 16 and Stata MP for multiprocessing. And I'm presented with, look at this, tips and tricks. There are many resources provided to you by Stata and that you can find online to always improve your programming. I'm going to say for that to remind me later. And this is the Stata Interface. The first window that is selected, the one default selected when you open, is this command window. Has the blue trim around it, and that is where I would type my commands. Begin creating my programs. As Stata is an IDE, interactive development environment, that I would type commands one at a time and see the result. Furthermore, Stata is a great program such that you can use the keyboard if you desired, and I'm a keyboard kind of guy, but if you like to use the mouse, then there are a variety of features in the top menu up here, as well as these toolbars. And for everything that you can do in the menu up here, there is a code command equivalent. And every time you submit a code, whether that's in the command window or submit a function using the menu, the results, as well as what you just typed or selected in the menu, will be printed in the window above the command window, called the results window. And that's the only windows I'll talk about for now, as I need to download some files for this workshop. But first, I will always mention that there is a sample data set in Stata, in most statistical programming languages, that you can open up and kind of play around with, practice your commands. So if I type SYS USE, standing for system use, and a space, and auto, AUTO, and press enter, then you see that this variables window in the top right got populated with all of the variables of this data set that I just brought in. And if I want to see what this data set looks like, this time I'll use the mouse rather than using the command window down there, is I'll navigate to this button in the toolbar that has a spreadsheet and a magnifying glass. And I realize you may not be able to see. So how's that? I press that and I see this is my data set, sample data set. And what I want to do now is, there are files, sample files, that CISER provides for this workshop and all other workshops that we do, such that if you cannot make one of the workshops, or you want to be ambitious and self-teach the materials to yourself by downloading the content on our website. So I'll open up our menu and I'm going to select Firefox as my web browser to go, you guessed it, back to my CISER homepage. I type in ciser.cornell.edu. This is where everything is, yo. And I shall scroll down a bit to this big training button, as a workshop, in this case, is training. I scroll down some more to see on this page, right above the heading of custom training for class, there's a link that says workshop downloads are available to the Cornell community. So that's what I want. And this list that is provided here, these downloads are for a lot of subjects here. We have Atlas TI, MATLAB, and Vivo, R Markdown, SAS, SPSS, and Stata way down at the bottom. And what we want to do is zip up, download these files as a zip file. So I must enter in my credentials to have access to these files. Must be a Cornell user. And now I have the option to open it or save it. And I definitely want to save this. So I select OK. And it says it probably went to the downloads folder. So I scroll all the way down to the bottom. I'm going to find this folder. File Explorer, right next to Windows. Internet Explorer. And I'm going to click on this PC on the left, or rather, maybe I'll check the downloads. There it is. Or I could go to this PC. I check in right here underneath network locations. I see my CISER account name, my NetID. Double clicking to enter there, and everything that I save in this space, whether it's the desktop, the documents, or the downloads on the CISER servers, are backed up and they are safe. So you always want to save your files in this location. I want to enter my documents, and just like I was saying, organized programmer. I want to create a new folder. It says STATA Workshop 4_14_2020. And that is where I shall put my files. I go up to here, this up level arrow. The last time I clicked to get out of the downloads was this back arrow. I go up a level. I go back to my downloads to find my zip file. Left click on it once. Right click on it. Proceed through the security message. And I want to extract all. And it will give me an option of where I want to download this folder. And I want to put it in my documents. That's why I created that folder. And it just came up by default, but I'm going to go all the way back. This PC on the left, I scroll down to where it says my network location, documents, and there's a folder in here that should say STATA Workshop 4_14_20. That's my folder. I'm inside of it. I say select folder. I say extract the contents, and I'll have this box checked so it'll bring me right there. Boom. Here we are. And I am ready to go in STATA. You know it. So I shall double click on this folder to open it. And these are all the files. Sample data sets, you even see this is the system data set that I used that command to open a little while ago. But you see here, SAS data sets. Here's some text files. As when you download data from online, it's usually can always be opened in a text file. And sometimes they don't provide a STATA dataset for you to easily download and just open up. So you need to be able to import all types of data. There's some sample do files right here, STATA do file, which are program files. They accomplish tasks that are associated with this workshop. And there is lastly these PDFs containing a copy of workshop slides. Now, I'm not going to do any workshop slides because I don't like that. But I believe these slides would be a good place where you can learn on your own if that is what you desire. And it pretty much follows the content that I'll be discussing. And that's everything's great. I'm ready to begin in STATA with one of these actual data sets that I have. But first, I shall mention that I have this system data set. And what's great about this CARS system data set is that it's already cleaned and it's already prepared and ready to go. And I think sometimes there's a misconception on the way these programming languages are used related to your research. The difficult part typically, and the time-consuming part would be the importing of the data and cleaning it up, cleaning the data especially. That can be time-consuming. manipulating your data set using valid data principles to restructure or organize your stuff in a different way. That is the time-consuming part. The actual creating of results and testing things, now that takes hardly any time at all. That is one command. And interpreting the results, that takes a couple minutes too. But just to prove what I mean, I can, with this data set right here, perform a regression just because it's clean and it's ready to go. I type regress, which is the command for a regression. Ooh, but first, I may know that the command name is regress, but I don't know anything about that command. So Stata, like many other statistical software languages, have built-in documentation. And it's very nice. All you have to do is type help prior to the command name that you are interested in. In this case, I know the command regress will create a linear regression equation for me, but I don't know particularly what I need to type in. So I type help regress, I press enter, and this help window from Stata pops up. Hey, thank you. And it tells me there's a whole key to understanding this syntax. And a lot of it really just takes time. But this bold word, regular text word, that would be our Stata keyword. And that has to be included in the command. Has to be first, too. That's the first thing I type. So even using this help documentation, I wonder, I can, if I grab the top of it so I can move this window around and move the mouse all the way over to the left until I can't go anymore, and then release the left mouse click, then I can split the screen. And I want to select Stata as my other window so I can check out the documentation as well as type my command. And I'm going to fiddle around with some of these windows because I don't really care about those ones just yet. But I see regress, right? That's what I have to type. So regress comes over here. It then says dep var, standing for dependent variable. And this is, believe it or not, in italics font. And it has a link that provides me to another space that gives me information on dep var. But I want to go back to my regression. Dep var in italics font is what you replace with your dependent variable. And it's right here. There's nothing around it. So that's something that I have to include right after regress. For my example, I shall use the price variable. I will predict price based off of miles per gallon. So I select price as my dependent variable. And next, in brackets are optional statements. So this is where in-dep vars, my independent variables. And let's click on that, see where it brings me. In-dep vars is a variables list separated by a space, so I can have more than one variable that I'm predicting price off of in this example. I'm only doing one for the sake of speed and time. I put another space away from price. I go up here, and I didn't talk about this when I did it, but in this variables tab, Stata, when it deals with variables and path locations, is case sensitive, and file names, where everything to the last detail has to be perfect. If this were a capital P in price, it would give me an error message. So I never want to take the chance of typing that in. I don't want to cause human error to be the reason why my program's not working. Rather, I can either click on this down arrow button to shoot the variable down to the command window, or I can click on the variables window and then double click on the miles per gallon, or to click on this down arrow to bring it down the command window. And very simple regression, but that's all. So I press enter, and the results looked kind of bad. I can't understand that. So I have to, sometimes this happens, only because the screen for me was split screen. So I have to go back to full screen. And nice little tidbit here, I can, another thing that I'm just talking about, with typing and human error, regress, price, and MPG. I'm not typing that in again. No way. So I can either press the page up button, boop. One press gets me my most recent commands. Two presses gets me my second most recent. Or I can select the command that I want from this history panel on the left. Double click on it and it runs it again. And you see, it provides a much better looking and presentable output. Quick analysis of this regression equation. The R squared value, very, very low. Low linear significance. That's kind of surprising. But right here would be my coefficient. This is interesting. For every 1 increase in miles per gallon, price goes down by almost 250 units of whatever this is, based on this data set. That's interesting. But just talking about that. Now, that was just displaying how I can get results so quickly. And I'll do another one really quickly as well to perform. If I press on this magnifying glass button or the pencil button, they kind of do the same thing, then all the way on the right, the variable foreign is actually a numeric variable. You see it's a binary variable or a dummy variable. It contains a value of either a 0 or a 1. And the purpose of doing this, if you've ever been a data enterer, it's way faster to type a 0 rather than typing the entire word domestic every time this comes up. And so on a 1 for foreign. You see up here at the top, when I have something selected, a cell, it shows me the real value. But why do I see foreign when it's actually supposed to be 1? And like I said, this data set's pre-cleaned up. It's a system data set. And we set it up, or they did, such that when Stata recognizes a 0, keep it as a 0, but put a placeholder on that 0 to say domestic. And for a 1, placeholder that says foreign. I'll close out of this window as I want to do a t-test comparing the average price between foreign and domestic cars. And for this quick demo, I'll use the menu to find what I want. And I don't even really know what I'm looking for. But if I were to guess, I'd say statistics, summaries, tables, and tests, because I wanted to do a t-test. What would be my next move? Classical tests of hypothesis. Well, that's definitely what I want. And here we have t-test. t-test calculator, z-test, known variance. I'll take a t-test just for the sake of demonstration. I fill out my options. In this case is to sample using variables, or no, using groups. The variable that I said I was comparing, I'm comparing price between domestic and foreign cars. So my variable is price. My group variable is my dummy variable, the value of a 0 or a 1. I'll keep everything else here. Maybe I'll check the second tab. Nope. And I'll press OK. And what you'll see just happened, my results got printed, obviously, but the equivalent of what I just did in the menu, if I had typed it out in the command window, it would look exactly like what I just highlighted. And it even shows up in the history here. And you see the differences between price. Quick analysis of this, the averages don't appear to be that off, only 300 units difference. And the p-value of being not equal is 68%. That would be a classic fail to reject the null hypothesis of the price of domestic and foreign cars being equal. But, so now I've talked about that. Quick results, analyzing them quickly, that's the easy part. But of course, you need to be able to import data. You need to know how to get the information into Stata, organize it, clean it up to be ready for these commands. Once you get to this point, then what I'll type next shall be clear. I will clear everything so far. And the reason why I did that is Stata, you see the variables window is now empty. Stata can only work on one data set at a time. So if I ever want to work on a different data set, in this case, to progress through this workshop, I want to import some files, an Excel file, an already existing Stata dataset, a text file, maybe a dataset that I download from online. There's very much that I can do. So if I'm working with different data, I got to clear the memory of what I was working on. And typically, you'd save your data set prior to clearing, but since I didn't actually change anything, I just printed some results. No purpose. And I shall my file explorer, where I have my STATA Workshop folder open. In case people don't know, I went to this PC, clicked on, at the bottom underneath network locations, my NetID underscore whatever. And then I went to the documents and I created this folder, STATA Workshop, whatever. And alas, here we are. Now I want to import various data sets, various ones. And the first one I shall do will be perhaps just a normal Stata data set, like this. Perhaps I have the luxury in which this data set is right here. And I could download it maybe from online and it gave me a clean Stata version. Yahoo! And then what I want to do is left click on it once to highlight it and right click to select its properties. This has all the secrets. In Stata, my desire is to import or open, since it's a Stata dataset already, I want to just open it up, check it out. So I shall copy, well, highlight its entire location and copy it. Control C or right click copy. As I must tell Stata where to find this file. Back down at the bottom, I go to Stata, I go to my command window, and to open a new or just a Stata dataset file, I type the use command and a space. Then I must tell Stata, like I just said, where to find this data set. So earlier I copied the path, now I'm pasting it. And I put a quotation mark there before I pasted the path, as I always like to include my file names and paths in quotation marks. After the end of the paste, I add another backslash because I told Stata where to find the file, but I didn't tell Stata the name of the file. I highlight that, I copy it, and I paste it after that backslash that I added. And I like to be in the habit also to add a .dta extension for a Stata dataset, which was presented also in the properties right here. So I could have copied and pasted that if I wanted to. I'll take the chance on 3 characters. And then I close out the quotation marks. What's important about these quotation marks is I don't have to include them all the time, but in this case, I do. If there's ever a space in the path name, in this case, my data is not 1 word, it's 2 words, there's a space in there. Any paths or file names with spaces must be enclosed in quotation marks. I press enter, and it didn't give me any errors. I'm not 100% sure that it worked yet. So I'll mouse over to the variables window. I see that it's populated. Before it was empty, so I know that something got opened. And I'll click on my magnifying glass to browse to check out the data set. There it is. It's present. The data opened, no problem. Hey! That is the easiest import, the most luxurious. But I'll close out of that. Next, I shall import. I'm going to do an Excel spreadsheet. So I'll click on back in my STATA Workshop folder, and I'll scroll around until I find one. Oh, be interesting. Oh my, no. There's no Excel spreadsheet here, so I will get one. I open the web browser. I'm just going to go to google.com, and I'll type in sample Excel data into Google. Press enter, and I'll take this first option, contextures.com. And I scroll down a bit. It shows the sample data right underneath this big title, sample data. And it says I can download the file by clicking on this link. And that's what I want. Boom, download. Aha! Another zip file. I shall save this file. And I bet I can guess where it is. I shall go to my documents section, and there it is. Left click on it once, right click on it, proceed Windows security. I'll extract all, and the organized programmer that is myself will browse for, hey, it was already here. This STATA Workshop folder, that is where I will extract this file. Extract. Now, I'm back in my STATA Workshop folder. I want to refresh the page and find this Excel data file, boo, boo, sample data. Right on track, baby. And the first thing I do before importing this data into Stata, before I look up the command of how to do that, I double click on the file. I want to open it up in its most raw format, in this case, an Excel file. And sometimes you don't have the option to open it up in its most raw format. However, you can almost always open every kind of file using a text file. Oh, look at this. There's a couple sheets that I wasn't intending. I navigate. The only one that I want is sales order sheet. Aha, I'll enable editing. And there's two ways that I can think of off the top of my head to accomplish this. But I will proceed. Perhaps I don't know exactly how. You know, like, what's the command that I use? And yeah, I will search Google. You'd be surprised how much programming can be learned by searching Google, checking out your online resources. And I'll just say Stata, import Excel. Whoa, first option. And it says import Excel, Stata manual, just like what I would do. Hey, it says it here, import Excel. And you see the word Excel is underlined, meaning you only have to type the part that's underlined. You could type Excel in full if you want, but if you feel lazy, then you could just type EXC. And something maybe that I didn't talk about is these square brackets are optional. So you can include them or maybe not. In this case, I have load an Excel file. Here's the command. I'm actually just going to highlight this part as that part has nothing around it. I know it needs to be at the start of my command. So I copy it. I go back down to Stata, and I'm about to paste it, but not yet. No, I'll paste it. Import Excel. And I put a space. Back to my documentation. Oh, not that one. Right. I had it in Firefox. It tells me file name. Well, what's that? I know what the file name is. The file name wants, I need to tell Stata where to find the Excel file, followed by the name. I wonder where that could be. I open the File Explorer. I go to where my Excel data file is. I left click on it once, right click the properties. It has it all. Just like I did before. I copy the entire location, highlight it, right click, copy. I go to Stata. I'm going to include this in my quotation marks because I like to. I add a backslash. Back to the properties. I copy the file name. Sample data with a capital S and a capital D. You know, if I were typing that in, I might forget the capital S, and if I do that, boom, error. And it's hard to find. Copy and paste. Thank you very much. And lastly, I include the extension .xlsx. It's hard to highlight and copy that. That's why I don't do it. But xlsx. And I close the quotation marks. And I also add an option Before, when I had a data set in, I just typed clear and that was it. Then I opened another data set called my data, but I didn't type clear again. So my data is still technically in the memory. I need it out of there. My data, bye. I'm not working with you anymore. So I want to bring in a new data set. I put a comma and a space. I'll jump quickly back to the documentation that I have online. Here's the comma, optional arguments also. And if I scroll down, here's my option of clear, replace the data in the memory. That's what I want. And whoa, what did I just stumble upon? I recall that the Excel spreadsheet I'm trying to import has 4 sheets, but I only want one of them. So here's another Excel option. I type sheet, and in parentheses and enclosed in quotation marks, woohoo, I include the name of the sheet. We'll bring it on. This order that I'm about to do doesn't matter either. So I'll type clear and I'll put a space. So that will clear the my data dataset. And then I'll type sheet. I'm opening a parentheses. I'm opening a quotation mark. The name of this sheet is called sales orders. And if I double click on the sheet name, it's highlighted. I want to, I want to copy and paste it. So it doesn't let me right click, but I'll do Control C. See if that works. If not, I'll remember sales orders, capital S, capital O, no space in my head. And I think sometimes there's an issue with importing if the data set is open in Excel. So I'm actually just going to close out of that, and I'm not going to save anything because I didn't change anything. But I'll paste in the sheet. Hey, that worked. Sales orders. I balance out the quotation marks. I balance out the parentheses. And everything in my command looks glorious. I press enter, and it tells me 7 variables, 44 observations. And now normally I scroll up to click on that magnifying glass, but I'll do the equivalent of typing browse in the command window. I'm a command kind of guy. Ahaha! So something happened here. You'll notice that just a quick little spiel about the importing of Stata and data types. These texts are red colored. Yeah. And red colored variables mean that they are string variables. They can contain anything really. Text, special characters, they can even be numbers, like this total column that I see. But wait, total column is not supposed to be red. It's supposed to be black colored font, normal colored font, for a numeric variable. That is not the case here. Also, why this happened. Usually the variable names are at the top here, but they're not. The variable names got imported as the first row of the data. So what Stata did is it went to the Excel file, it expected the first row to be data when it was actually variable names, and imported it in here. And then Stata recognized, oh, these are letters and words. So we're going to make all of these variables string variables. This total one especially, because the first occurrence was total, even if it wasn't the first occurrence. If it were any time total was anywhere in this list, whether at the top or the bottom, this variable would be red colored and a string variable because it does not contain all numbers. I need to fix this. I want to do statistics on this stuff. And what I do is I would go back to my documentation. That's online, but I could also just type help import Excel. Same thing, same place. I click on my import Excel options. What I really need is something to tell Stata, hey, like the first row, count that as the variable names. Whoa, look at right here. First row, treat first row of Excel data as variable names. So I type first row, or I could just type for short first because it's underlined. However, typing this import Excel command took me a long time. I had to copy and paste a lot of stuff. So I'm not doing it again. I'm not going to type it again. I'm going to find it within my history tab over here. Number 8 for me, import Excel. I click on it once, just once. Double clicking on it will run it. I want to make an addition. When I looked at the documentation, it's an option that comes after the comma. I put a space after this sheet option and I type first row. I'm still clearing the memory, so this is good, that's needed. And I press enter again. Still, same thing, 43 observations. So there's one less row. I wonder where it was. Now, alas, everything's expected. I expected these 3 variables to be black colored fonts. They're numeric, and they are now. These 3 variables have text, so they are obviously string variables. And I'll close out of that. And I'm going to go a little bit off script for now. Just a quick little show as I imported an Excel dataset, and I kind of want to do some stuff to it before I go to my next importing method. In this case, when I browse my dataset, I'll type browse again. I see that this region variable is very interesting to me. And I'm also interested in these units cost and these total variables. So that's what I'll focus on for a few of these things. In which case, I will type the tabulate command. This will print frequency counts for me. In which case, I want to see of the region variable, how many are from the east and the west and the north and whatever other regions I may not have seen from just glancing at it. Over in the variables window, I click on this down arrow region, next region, to shoot it into my command window. I click back into the command window to highlight it, get the blue around, and I press enter. And look at that, north wasn't even a region. I've got central, the east, and the west. These are their corresponding frequency counts and percentages. So now, for the sake of display, I want to look at the average, maybe not just the average though, like the average and the standard deviation and possibly some other statistics of these 2 variables, unit cost and total, because those were interesting to me. And this time, I shall do it from the menu. I go to the top, statistics, summaries, tables, and tests. Last time I went to classical tests of hypothesis. This time, summary and descriptive statistics. Look at all of the items that are in this menu. And I always like to say, if you ever think something is possible in a programming language, the answer is probably yes. Now, the next steps would be finding the command or the space in the menu where that accomplishes your task, and then learning how to use it. In this case, I'll select the summary statistics, just like I wanted. And the variables I'll select from the drop-down menu. I want the units cost and the total, just like I said. And I want to display the additional statistics. Oh, yeah. So this seems good for me, whatever that means. Factor variable display options. Okay, we'll just get out of that. I always like to check out all of the tabs in case I want to add something else that may be present. But everything seems good for this. I'll press OK, and wow, I'll scroll back up to where I'm familiar. This time it used the summarize command with a detail option. So it shows the percentages, the minimum value, the maximum value, the average, standard deviation, the standard deviation squared, the variance, skewness and kurtosis. And it does that for the unit cost right here, and then the total variable. And you notice how I specify the variables here. If I didn't list any variables, by default, Stata will just run this command on all of the numeric variables. Just to show that a little bit, I could just type that, and now I'd see units as a list here. In fact, it shows even the string variables, but you can't calculate statistics based off of string variables. You can't create an average based off of text and words. So that's a few things. Now, now, I'm not done yet. I was interested in the unit cost, and I was interested in the total. But perhaps I want to see if the unit cost and the total is different for the three kinds of regions that I have of East, Central, and West. Which one has the highest? Which one has the lowest? And this time, I would probably use the same command, the summarize command. But I like to use the command window, so that's what I'm going to do. Help summarize to show the documentation of this command. I type summarize. I don't really want to have all those statistics again. Kind of annoying. But what I want is this right here. By are allowed. But I need to see this prefix. And this by option, usually you can add it at the end after this comma, by, and then you list a variable. But this time, I can't put it at the end. I must put it at the beginning. See the prefix. No problem. So I see by, then my sorting variable, my grouping variable, which in my case would be region. I want to see the statistics for unit cost and total by region. So that's my by variable. And then my stata command, which would be my summarize command. In which case, I'll go by that. By. I'll select my region from over here. I would have, if I were just typing that in, I would have done probably a lowercase r. And from the documentation as well, I have to add a colon. Then the command I want to type in, summarize, and I wanted it to be those two variables, unit cost and total. That's what I wanted to see. And I didn't want to include that detail option. A little bit too many statistics for my liking. But I press enter. Aha. And I get my first error message, ladies and gentlemen. It says not sorted. Ugh. Are you kidding me? So the first thing that I do, naturally, would be, well, the first thing that I probably would do, would be to search this error message. I just clicked on it. So it says, to solve the problem, use sort to start the data, then reissue the command. So I can use sort. But also, in Stata and a lot of programs, you can separate commands, but you can also combine them. So you can have one command that performs multiple functions, or you can have 5 commands that accomplish the same functions. I see here, I use this by option. There's a by sort option that sorts it before it does this by thing. The error message said not sorted. All right then, let's fix it. I'm gonna press the page up button to get my most recent command. There's no way I'm typing that in again. Right next to the Y in by, I type sort with no space. And I would press enter to complete the command, and output will be presented. I see the first, this is for the central. And now I'll do a quick comparison. Oh la la, look at that. Look at that. Looking at the average for unit cost in the central is 18, twice as much in the east, but in the west it's 53. I'm very skeptical of that data. I would potentially consider checking for outliers if they are present. And the total is pretty consistent overall. But, oh yeah, here we go. And a standard deviation of 108. 275 of a unit cost. That is huge. I am going to browse this data set. This is exactly what I'm talking about, in which cleaning the data set and manipulating it and moving it around, that is what is taking the time here. So what I'll do is those values of 275, or maybe there's just one here. I don't know where it is, but it is there somewhere. It's huge. So I kind of want to get rid of that. It's like a high outlier. And in which case, there's usually statistics that I could do based off of this. So I could do, well, yeah. I just want those removed to check it out. I know 275. Let's get, I'll put a upper bound on 230. So everything over 230, I want to remove from my data set. Entirely remove. Actually, there are a couple ways to do this. In lots of programming, in all of programming really, multiple ways to accomplish the same task. So I could have dropped those observations if I wanted to, but rather I wanted to maybe just not include them in this command. And I do really like to use the command window, but this time I'll use the menu once more as just a display. I believe using the command window and typing your commands gives you more freedom, and there's some things that you can only type that are not provided in the menu. So that I have to mention. But I'll go to my summary statistics like I had before. I have my 2 variables. I just want the standard display. And if I remember from this up here, I was doing it by a variable. So I check this box, I guess. I select my region variable as my by variable. And now I want it to have an if expression too. And I want to exclude the observations for unit cost. that are above a certain value. 230 is what I had decided before. So I'll click create over here. And I need to know my variable names. I'll get it from over here. No. Whatever. I'll highlight unit cost. I'll copy it. I'll go back to my summarize window and I'll paste it in here. And if unit cost is less than 230 was my plan. Boom. Hey. So now I'll press OK. And after I press OK, you'll realize that the command will be very similar, what's printed, to what is right here. It'll just have another option, an if option. I scroll up, it says by region. This time it put comma sort. Different syntax, but still gets the job done. And it just added this spot at the end. If the variable unit cost is less than 230, then include them in my analysis. Now I see the maximum unit cost for the West region. It used to be 275. Now it's only about 20. Drastic change. That's crazy to see something like that. And so that's cool and all, you know, that printed my results, but perhaps I want to take this a step further. I want these numbers, the average and the standard deviation, I want them to be in their own Stata dataset. So I can do further statistics if I want, or I can just print them out or something. Then that's no problem. This is a little bit more of an advanced command called the collapse command. And it's a great one. It shortens my data set and shows me the summary statistics, or the statistics that I want. I'm going to start going through my process. This is like the same process for every command. I approach it the same way. I know my command is the collapse command. I guess there'd be a step prior to this. Find the command that I need that will accomplish my task. That's actually a very hard step. But the collapse command is what I want. I shall type help collapse. But before I press enter, I want to figure out, well, what do I want to collapse exactly? I want it to be similar to this, so I want to show the average of unit cost and total, as well as the standard deviation for unit cost and total by the region, but not just printing it here to create its own data set. So that's my goal. I type help collapse to open up my documentation. Collapse is the first part of the command. And I'm going to put this on the left side of the screen. Take my left mouse click, hold the top of the screen, and then drag it all the way to the left till it can't go anymore. And then I release. And then I have an option to fill the right side of the screen with something. So I'll click on my Stata window. Balance these out a bit. So it says help, and then it says CList. Okay, what's CList? Well, right below it. CList is either stat, varlist, stat, and so forth, or stat target variable equals var name. So target variable would be the name of the variable that gets created in this new data set, and var name would be the variable that it already is. So I'm going to cruise right through this command, and I'm going to go 100% based off of what I have in the documentation. But first, a very important structure. There's no undo function in Stata. Well, technically there is, and I'll talk about that right now. As I type the preserve command, just preserve, and press enter, Stata takes like a snapshot and remembers what the data set looks like and how it is right now. And I can always get back to how the data set is right now. So any changes I make, I can get back to how my data looks currently. And this I always like to do if I'm removing observations rows of the data set, or removing columns, or structuring it in a very different way. And that's what I'm doing. So I type my collapse command from the documentation. That's first up. It says CList, where CList is this. You see there's square brackets around where it says stat, but if I don't include the statistic that I want, by default, it will include the average. I'm going to follow this bottom method, as it may look a little bit more complicated, but it's going to do me a lot better in the long run. And where it says stat, anything that is in this list below, I can include in my stat. So I've got a clear picture in my head of what the command is going to be. I've looked at the documentation. I'm about to, boom, get after it. No fear. I open my parentheses and I type mean and close it from over here. Mean. And I want the average. Next is target var equals var name. So I want to call this avg underscore, and variable names can't have spaces. So your boy loves to use underscore, kind of like a space. And I'll say the unit cost. Oh. And I'll delete that space in between. Oh, I even grabbed it. Usually I just type it in. And I say equals. Now I want to put that in. Unit cost. Hey. So that's one variable. And I can keep listing variables here. I want avg underscore. This time I'll call it total. And that will be equal to this total variable. We're painting a picture. So now I got the average. Got that all set up. And if I recall, I'll go to, there's this comma in options. You can almost always use, like I said before, the by option with every command. Now, the command before, the summarize command, we were still able to use the by option, but it had to be as a prefix. This command, we use the by option, and it's the opposite of a prefix. It's at the end of the command. From the documentation, it says by, enclosed in parentheses, is the variable I want to do this by. I type by, and I put in the region variable, and I close out my parentheses. Everything looks super tight. Looks very good. Now, before I submit this command, actually, I'm going to go back to full screen of Stata, and I'll press enter. No errors. Whoop, whoop. Yeah, boy. And I type the browse command to open. Now, this is the equivalent, essentially, of what I did with the summarize command, but now it's in a data set. Now I can browse it like this. But wait, no! I forgot to include the standard deviation of the unit cost and the and the total. I wanted to include those. Wait, no problem, because I had preserved the data set prior to making this huge change. If I didn't do that, all of it would be potentially gone, and I would have had to do the entire import process and everything I did. Oh my gosh, thank my marbles for preserving the data set prior. And to get it back to what it was like before this collapse command, I type restore and enter. And I see all my variables are back. When I browse my data set, everything's back to normal. Woo! Now, just in case I screw up again, I will type preserve in preparation. And I'm not going to type everything in that collapse command again. So from the history, I'll click on the command I want just once. And I'll add at the end of total, before I include the comma, I include another SD, I believe is what it is. If that's not it, then I'll find it in this documentation for standard deviation. There it is, SD. I was right. Boom. And then I include the name of the variable. So SD underscore, I'll copy unit cost from over here and put it over here. And I'll say that is equal to, oh, I already had unit cost, so I'll just paste that. And then lastly, I'll say SD underscore total is equal to total. Totals, 5 letters, capital T, not that hard to screw up. All right, I think it's good. I'll proceed through the next iteration of this collapse and see if I'm any better. No errors, woohoo! I type browse, and it shows me I added 2 more columns, SD unit cost, SD total. But wait, there was like those outliers that I wanted to not include. Well, good thing I preserved my data set so I can exclude them if I want. But I do want to have a storage of this data set that I have right now. So I'm going to save this data set the way it is. And to do that, I type save, or even, I'll use the menu, file, save as. I'll go to this PC, scroll down to network drives where I have my NetID or CISER account. I put all of my files in the documents in a STATA Workshop folder. And I'm going to call this, geez, what will I call this? I'll call this Excel underscore full by region. All right, cool. Now, I wanted to remove those outliers and put that in a data set. So I type restore again. I'm back to my format. And I want to get my collapse command back. It's not that one. It's this one. 27 for me. And I want to add another option, an if option. Just like the by option, the if option is also in pretty much every command. So I go over here. Well, I actually, I want to see it, how it was presented in the command. So after I've listed all my variables in the stats, so before the comma, I just type if, and I believe it was, I have unit cost variable already in the command. So I'll copy that and I'll paste it there. If unit cost is less than 230. And that does everything. Oh, I didn't preserve this data set, but I think I'm pretty good this time. I'll press enter. I scroll up here to browse my data set, and it's different in the West, way different. Just as the summarize command had predicted. They're identical. But this time, rather than saving it as a Stata dataset, when I go to my Stata Workshop folder and I refresh at the top, there's a new file in here somewhere that says sample. I'll just sort by the date modified. Excel full by region. Right, but it's a Stata dataset. This time, I want to export this data as an Excel file. It came in as an Excel file, now it's heading out as an Excel file as well. I could either go File, Export, and Data to Excel spreadsheet. That's a pretty good way. Look, I could also send the results to an Excel spreadsheet. But I like to do the way I like to do things. With my command, export Excel. And then I just paste where I want it to go. So I open my folder, just like I did. I'll right click on my Excel spreadsheet, the one that I have imported. To get its properties, I need its location to tell Stata where to save the file. So I copied that, paste it, I add a backslash. Now I will name this file, whatever I want to call it. I'll say sample data stats _ region. Yeah, and I add the extension .xlsx for an Excel spreadsheet. I close out the parentheses, and I'm going to add an option. Normally I would look at the documentation for this, but I'm familiar. I'm going to add the replace option, and this can be included in save commands as well, such that if the file sample data stats _ region exists with that exact name in this folder, this will overwrite that file. It's saved, and now I want to check it out. I go back to my folder, I'll refresh the folder, and here it is. I want to open it in Excel, see how she looks. And then following, two very important and fun details of coming up in Stata. And the variable names didn't come along. And I, at this point, am getting a very, very long way down the road. Like, I'm cruising. And at this point, I've typed more than 35 commands, such that I want to keep track of all this stuff. Where if I was doing my research and I'm chugging along and the day is coming to an end, I can't be working with Stata open my entire life. Gotta close it sometimes. And what I'll do is I'll take the commands that I've typed in, specifically the ones that work, and I'll put that into a do file, a program file that I can run at any time. So what I'll do here in the history window, I usually like to start by opening this do file. And to do that, I would click on this here. And then I type along in the command window. And if I get a command that I like, I'll copy it from up here and paste it into my do file. Of course, at this point, we're already past that limit. It's too far. We didn't start with the do file. We've already typed 35 commands. I'm not going to highlight and copy all of that. It seems too time consuming. So from the history window, I'm going to select a lot of commands, and I will send them to a do file. I'll take this one, auto, just by left clicking on it once. And I want to hold the control key for PC users. For Mac users, I'm not sure. But whatever key allows you to select multiple items. I'll exclude the help documentation commands. So I'll put in this regression one, this t-test, this clear, this open, this import. exclude this import and this browse. I want this import because it looks like right here, I imported the Excel spreadsheet, but not perfectly. I had to go back to the documentation, and then I ran the same command again. So my trust is the second one worked, because then I started doing this tabulate. I'll take all of these summarize commands, this by sort, that one's the same. Okay. And I want this, geez, all of these. Maybe not this collapse command because I had to restore it. But this collapse command, definitely, because I saved it. And then also, I'll take boop, boop. Not this Excel export, but this one. And that. Ha! So I've selected all my commands finally. And of the ones that are selected, I right-click in the area, and I say send selected to do file editor. That way, if I were to pick up on this tomorrow and I wanted to get caught up to where I was, then I could just run all of these commands. But I mean, obviously there's more deep meaning to just that. I could also use this do file to send to other researchers so they can see my results. And the real purpose of it is so, I mean, the goal in the end is really I can send my code to him or her or anybody, and they would be able to run my code and it would work on their machine, so long as they have Stata. And it's perfectly replicable because it comes as these commands. Haha! All I have to do is make sure to save this do file editor, file, save as, and I'll call it work_go. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. There's a few more details that I'd like to talk about. I, of course, need to complete speaking about all of the import processes in Stata. But now that I have this nice do file, I'm going to customize it. And you see all this color-coded. Stata commands usually begin with a keyword, and the keyword is blue-colored font. So if you're typing in this batch mode, then you know that if the word that begins your command is blue, well, probably a good sign. And also, I prefer to type in this batch mode, as I can run all of these commands if I want, but you must be prepared, as I just added this clear option in case there happens to be a data set in my memory when I'm bringing in this system data set. So I always got to be prepared for that. And typically when I'm saving data sets as well, to have a replace option. Ooh, what a find right there. Had to replace, or else that would give me an error. And such. Now I will add some comments. And comments are great. Comments. Imagine looking at this program 5 years in the future. Are you going to know what it does just by looking at it? Probably not. If you ran it, maybe you'd figure it out. But why not create comments and tell yourself what it does in just normal language? So I'm going to add a block comment at the beginning, a / and an asterisk. And you notice everything turned green. Now everything's a comment. Stata is waiting for, and I'm going to skip a few lines by pressing enter, an asterisk and a / Kind of like, this is a block comment, can go multiple lines. A normal comment can only be one line. I'll add that right here, an asterisk. I'll say open system cars dataset. Up at the top, I usually like to do a header. I'm the author, hey. And I like to put a purpose of this import some data sets of all formats, show some statistics, manipulate data. Yeah, pretty straightforward. I also like to add a comment usually above every single command that I do, just to tell me that might be a bit overkill, but I'll do it for a few of these and then maybe not. So regression, predicting price based on miles per gallon. And I should put, linear regression at the top to make sure. And then here I'll put this one, to sample t-test comparing price between foreign and domestic cars. And that's pretty much it. I'll add some details here like open Stata dataset. And let's say import Excel. Print summary statistics. Visualize data. Add some details. I always like to add a comment above the preserve command. Preserve, undo, replacement, I guess is what I'll call it. I don't even know how to say the collapse command. Summarize into new data set. Save dataset as Excel spreadsheet. Hey. And that seems like good enough comments for now. I see that I've made some changes, so I want to file and save my do file. Now, a little while back, I said there were two very important things, and the do file was the first one. Very important. I always want to keep track of your work. And the second important thing would be this directory that I'm about to set. Now, every time I've been opening a data set or saving a data set, I have to include this entire path. It's kind of annoying getting to the properties, finding it, having to copy it and paste it and include it in my code every time. I kind of feel like it is unnecessary. And Stata feels that way too. So I have the option, usually good practice, you organize all your files. You're working in one file, opening and saving in the same spot. So I type the cd command, standing for change directory, and a space. I could look at the documentation for this, but I'm not going to. I'm going to File Explorer to my folder where all of my files are, where I've been opening all of the sample files and saving stuff. I have two ways of doing this. I could either click in this address bar at the top, not highlighting any of the folders, just click in an empty space, and there's my path, and I could copy that. But I like to, get the properties. So I select an anonymous file, anyone, doesn't matter. And I'd select its, properties, so long as it's in this folder. Oh, look at that, the location's already highlighted. I've been getting the location this entire time, so this is not new. I include it in quotation marks, and now I never have to include this path if I'm opening from this folder. Stata will just assume that I am opening from that folder, and I can use just the file name. Ha! So much better. What I'm going to do is, that was a good command for me. I'm going to highlight it in this window. I'm going to copy it, and right over to my do file. Normally I put it at the top of my program, so I'm actually going to do that. I'll even put a comment, set directory, location of files. And I paste my commands. Beautiful. I'll download one from the internet again. I had this example Excel file. I'm going to go, you guessed it, CISER.cornell.edu. I want some data. And we provide. We provide data. Scroll down and find the data button. On the right-hand side, search data archive. That's what I want. And I will pick some data, anonymous data set, ASEC, in all capitals. That's ASEC. And just for the sake of whatever, I'll pick this first one. And I don't want any details on this, but I'm just picking a sample data set. So I'm looking, here's the data, and this is all it says: data, documentation, and data dictionary. There's no Stata file for me to download. There's just a data file. And this is no problem. I can download this data with the help of the documentation and the data dictionary. I'll highlight or I'll checkbox all of these: the documentation, the dictionary, and the data itself. And I'll actually open that in a new link. I have to sign in, which I did, and then I want to download. I have the zip folder that will contain all the files. First download, kind of weird, I don't know why, but I tried it again and it worked. Now I go to my downloads, I refresh, and boom, here we are. I'm actually going to go to this STATA Workshop folder, and no, you know what? No, I'm going to extract all the contents just into that same folder. I just set my directory. I kind of want to keep it that way. So I'll find my spot that I want, this PC, network locations to my drive. I was in the desktop. I have got my workshop and my folder. That's my folder. That's it. And I don't have to show the extracted files because I already have the folder open. I know where they're going. So I shall refresh, and somewhere in here, I'd either see a folder or some files. Okay, so here's the data file. Oh, they're all right here. Hey. And again, just like I did with the Excel file, before I import this into Stata, I need to open it up. So naturally, I double click on it and it says, I can't open this file, naturally. But if anybody remembers, I said you could open mostly every single data set using the Notepad application. So I click that down arrow, I'll pick another application and I'll select Notepad. Thank you. Of course, the option to edit in Notepad++ is usually the better option, but look at this. Oh my gosh. Looking at this, you're thinking, whoa, oof, okay. Now what this format is would be a fixed format data set. And each variable has designated columns, whether that's 3 columns or whether that could be that many columns. I don't know. Depends on what the code book and the documentation tell us. Also, you notice that there are no words, no text. As in the system data set way earlier, there was an example where it was a binary variable, in which case a 0 designated domestic cars and a 1 was for foreign cars. And this is the same principle, except there's just more than 2 choices. Whenever it sees a 1, then we can tell Stata to give it that name. Whenever we see a 3, it'll be assigned a different label. A value label is what we call it. So I know that the download worked. Here's the data set. Now I need to comprehend its contents. I can close that up. That's fine. This. I'll go straight to the documentation file. I'll open it with Adobe Acrobat Reader. Oh. Zoom out a bit. Get out of here. Oh, wow. This is nothing. This is just a README file. I thought this was the whole documentation, but no. Oh, well. That's right here in the text file. This will give me the information that I need. And is it a text document? Does it tell me? I want to see its properties first. It is, in fact, a text document. So this gives me the information. And perhaps I would want, actually, this data set open again. And I like to, in these cases, I open with Notepad, but Notepad++ is much more helpful in this case. And I'll do the split screen again. So I left click in this empty space on the window, and I drag it all the way to the right as far as it can go, and then I let go. And I have the option to replace it with this, I guess, just to show what this layout file is telling me in relation to the actual data file. So I see right here, this variable, HRE, chord. It's 1 character long. It's the first variable we see, starts the first one, and it's all households, household record. So that's that. This next one's a bit better. It's 5 characters long, starts in the second column, and this is the household sequence number. So you see, if I click in this second column, I believe at the bottom here, it tells me that, it tells me right down here, the column number that my mouse is on. Well, that my mouse is to the left of my cursor. So I keep going and it changes down here. You see, boop, boop. Oh, I just added some zeros. That's not good. Okay, good. Control Z to get that out. But I use this documentation. The next 5 spaces would be, starting here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I guess it takes the next 5 numbers. There we go. And it goes on that way for a long time. And with data sets like these, sometimes you're provided with, if you're lucky, a Stata data set that you can just open up and it's already cleaned. But sometimes you're provided a do file, an importing do file, where you download the do file, and that is similar to this. It'll have a bunch of commands typed out, and you run it, and it imports the data and cleans it up for you. That'd be nice if that was an option for this as well, but it's not. Alas, I must use this text file, this documentation, as everything that we need. Now, I'll just grab a few variables. I'll grab this second variable. I can take as many or as few that I want. So I'll just take a few. I'll take this second variable, starts at the second line and goes for 5 spaces. It goes from column 2 to column 7. And so I'll get ready with Stata. I'm ready now. I open my Stata. I type help infix. to check out the documentation for importing a fixed format text data file. It's exactly what I have. Even though it's .dat, I'm still importing it this way. And it's a fixed format because of the documentation we looked at, because each location or variable has a specified column span. So here we go. Infix specifications using file name. And you see Infix dictionary. I'll talk about that later. But what do the specifications mean? They're not giving me much help. Aha! And which is great about these documentations too. Usually at the bottom, they have example codes. Aha, ha, ha. This is telling me that this is the variable that I will assign. You notice in the data file, there's no variable names. I have to specify the variable names that they provide me in the documentation file. Well, I can name it anything I want, but I'll probably name them those. And then I specify the column span of where to find these variables in the real data file. And then I list as many variables as I want here, continuing that process until I'm done. And I specify the data set that I will open. Using somebody else's sample code to your own will certainly help. And you know what I'm going to do, actually? I get that. I'm going to copy this entire command, highlight it, and I'm going to copy it. Then I'm going to open my do file editor. And, oh geez, import fixed format. I haven't even done that yet. So what I'll do is I shall add a comment and paste this command. I took it from the documentation. I actually closed the documentation. It's done its job. I got my sample command. That's all I need. I type infix. And now actually I'll get this layout over here. I don't need to see the dataset anymore. I trust the layout. Everything is good. I can get out of that, and I'll put the do file on the other side of the screen. Hey, now I can look at the documentation and just type really easy. I'll copy and paste this, HSEQ. For some reason, this dash, it might not be allowed in variable names, so I'm going to delete it. I don't like it. And I specify it goes from 2 to 7. 2, 5 spaces to 7. I also want this one. Family income. Yeah, I'll copy this. Oh boy. And that goes from column 10 to column 12. And now also in the documentation provides me the equivalents. So when I see in columns 10 to 12, when I see a number there, any of these numbers, if I see a 4, then I realize the family income is 10,000 to 12,500. And although those are not imported immediately, I have to create those, and I will. So I'll just put in those two variables for now. Now I have to specify the using option, like it has up here. And aha, if you recall, where did I put it? Oh yeah, I have my cd command up here. I set my directory. So now I only need to reference, I don't need to include the whole path. I still like to use quotation marks, but I'm just going to reference the file name. I go to my folder where I saved my file. I left click on it once, right click properties. all I need is the file name with the extension ASEC 2009 with .dat. I copy that and I paste it in between the quotation marks. I can either highlight one specific command that I want to run. I'll close out of these. I don't think I need them anymore. Or, so I'll just highlight this infix command and I'll click on this play icon up at the top, upper rightmost, and you see it sends the command to my Stata window. Ooh, a big boy data set. It's almost 400,000 observations. Let's browse to see how she looks. And that's kind of what I expected, except for this. Family income. I think there was something else. Aha! So it goes from 2 spaces. It only goes from 10 to 11. And I guess 2 would be 2 to 6 instead of 2 to 7. So I make a minor edit in my code, 2 to 6, 10 to 11, because then the value labels wouldn't work out. And I have to add a clear option, and I'll just delete this one up here. It's pretty much just the same thing. Well, it does. I'll highlight this infix command. I'll redo what I did and see if I get better results. I'll browse my data set. Yeah, that's much better. That actually fits what the data set was suggesting. I guess I'll open the data set again, maybe to confirm, just to do. I know 1 and 14, that'll be in the first row somewhere. So I can use Notepad++ is the move here. So 1, that's the first one, there we go. Now I see a 14 right there. That should be column 10, and it is. And it goes, yeah, 14, there we go. Confirmed, the import was successful. I can just, check with 1 row, and I know it works for all of them. So yeah, baby, nice. Import a fixed format data set. And now I want to save this, so I type save, and it's much more of a convenience to use the keyboard after you've set the directory. You can just save and then assign names to it. So I'll call it, ASEC. Well, I like to include quotation marks. ASEC, 2009, and that's it. I'll add a replace option as well. So now it's saved as a Stata dataset. If I wanted to use that export Excel command, I could export it as an Excel file. And since I had that, I copied that command from up here, copy. I want this to be in my do file, it's part of the family. So save and replace gets added to the do file. A couple more imports left. Not very complicated ones. I'd say the one that was just performed, the fixed format, requires the most attention to detail and is the most time consuming. Something I forgot, where I wanted to add some of these value labels. I'm not going to apply all of them because that'll take some time and I'm not into that. But I will apply a few of them. Let's see, I saw 14 was the first one that I saw. So I'm just going to use that one. I'll apply a value label to 14s. I'll copy and paste this label. That's what I want. And a 14. So what I do is I come up here next to the button that I would browse. I hover over these buttons. It says Variables Manager. That's what I want. I click on the family income variable, and actually, at first I'll create the value label, but right here next to value label, I press manage, and then there's nothing here. So I create a label. This is the name of the label. I can call it anything. Fam Income Labs for family income labels. then this is the value, 14. That stands for, and I'll paste what I copied, somebody who's making a quarter of $100,000 to almost 6 figures. I add that, press the add button, and then I'll just create one value label, and I press OK. Oh, it's not a valid name, most likely because it contains spaces. I'll replace every space with an underscore. I press OK. Boom! How do you like that? And I'll close out of this. Now, I created the value label, but I haven't applied it to the variable. So I make sure the variable is selected over here. I have value label in the dropdown. Now it appears. I select it. I press the apply button, and that has been done. I also notice that I want this part right here, family income. When I see HU Fam Inc., I don't know what that means just by looking at it. So I'm going to apply a label to the variable, like a name tag. I cover value label, and of course this is in the documentation. Everything you need to import the dataset is in the documentation. Now, it could take you a while going this method to make it perfectly clean, but it's all there. And all the commands would be similar. So I include the label now, family income. Hey, that's nicer. I click apply. I like this. I close out. And I also see that all of my commands that I just did using the mouse, all 3 of them got pasted to the window here. I want those. So I'm going to highlight them all and copy them. Head to my do file, and before the save command, I want to implant them in. Now, sometimes when you copy and paste multiple commands, well, not sometimes, every time, there's a period that begins the command. That cannot be included in the batch file, or else an error would occur. I can include these line breaks, that's fine, but I can't have those periods at the beginning. So I add a new line, I'll put a comment, apply labels, value labels, and variable labels. Yeah. I'll save my do file, we're cranking along. And then I'll run this save command again, just to make sure that that data set now has the most updated stuff. I'm going to clear my memory. A few more imports using the dictionary file, and let's do that. And the command for importing with a dictionary file, help in file. You gotta love the help documentation. Oh, wow. So you can in file with free format, which is one of, you know what? I'll go with that first then, the free format. Potentially, or this import to limited. I'm not sure what I'll go with. Oh, is it happening again? Yeah. I gotta end the Zoom if possible. Okay, I'll pick up where I left off.